D'accord. LPS-Boost, when cancer learns to hide. There's a version of prostate cancer that doesn't care if you hit it with radiation. It sits there, spreads through your bones, your lymph nodes, your lungs, and just shrugs. You pump it full of toxic particles designed to hunt down and obliterate cancer cells, and nothing happens. Or worse, it happens slowly, then stops. The cancer figured out how to disappear from the scanner's view. It turned invisible. So here's the question. What do you do when your deadliest weapon stops working because the enemy learned to hide? That's exactly the problem researchers at University of Washington and UCLA just tackled. For years, we had this incredibly promising treatment for advanced prostate cancer. It's called PSMA-617, and when it works, it genuinely changes lives. But here's the brutal part. It doesn't work the same way for everyone. Some patients get years of remission. Others barely budge. The difference? Whether their cancer is screaming on a PET scan or whispering. And nobody had really figured out what to do about the whisperers. Anya Iravani and her team, a sprawling collaboration across leading cancer centers, decided to run an experiment. They asked a deceptively simple question. If some patients' cancers are too quiet to respond, what happens if we just turn up the volume? What if we give them more treatment, more often? This is the LPS-Boost trial, published in the Journal of Nuclear Medicine in August 2026. And the results are genuinely surprising. Let me explain what they actually did. They took patients with metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer. That's the aggressive stage, the one that's spread everywhere and has stopped responding to hormone therapy. But here's the twist. They specifically recruited people whose cancers had low PSMA expression. PSMA is basically a protein handle on cancer cells that helps the treatment grab on. Low PSMA means the cancer is harder to catch. Think of it like fishing for bass that barely ripple the water. You need different bait, or you need to fish harder. The researchers chose door number 2. This was a phase 2 trial, which means they weren't just asking, does this work? They were asking, does this work better, and is it actually safe? Over multiple clinical sites, they took patients who'd tried low PSMA before and seen either no response or the response fade away. Then they gave them an intensified treatment schedule. Instead of standard dosing spread over months, they compressed it. More medicine, delivered more aggressively. They tracked everything: PSA levels, imaging scans, side effects, survival. They watched closely for bone marrow damage, kidney problems, anything that might crack under the pressure. This isn't about blind hope. This is about measuring whether desperation can be weaponized responsibly. What they found changes the conversation in a crucial way. Patients who received the intensified schedule showed significantly better response rates than historical controls, the patients from previous trials who got standard dosing. We're talking about patients whose cancers barely showed up on scans suddenly lighting up as if someone turned up the brightness. Their PSA levels dropped more dramatically. More importantly, they stayed down longer. But here's where honesty matters. This wasn't a home run. Response wasn't universal. Some patients still didn't respond. But the patients who did respond, they lived longer. Time to progression extended measurably. That's not a typo. We're talking about months of extra life in some cases, maybe a year or more in others. In metastatic cancer, that's the difference between seeing your kid graduate and not. The side effects were manageable, but real. Bone marrow toxicity showed up in some patients. Their blood counts dipped, which is serious but usually reversible. A few developed kidney issues. One patient had a serious complication, though the team was appropriately transparent about whether it was truly caused by the treatment or correlation masquerading as causation. The point is, this worked, but it had teeth. It wasn't free. Medicine never is. So what does this mean for someone actually facing this diagnosis? If you're a metastatic prostate cancer patient whose tumor barely shows up on the standard scans, you now have something your doctor didn't have 6 months ago. Evidence that turning up the intensity might actually help. That's worth something. But, and this is crucial, this is still a phase 2 trial. It's promising, it's not yet standard of care. You wouldn't walk into your oncologist's office and demand it this week. But you could have a very different conversation in a year or two, especially if phase 3 trials confirm these results. There's a limitation worth naming. This trial wasn't gigantic. It was focused, intensive work. That means the effects are real, but we need to see them replicate in larger patient populations. Different hospitals might run it slightly differently. Patient selection matters. Age, prior treatments, organ function, all of it shapes outcomes. Plus, we still don't fully understand why some patients respond to intensified dosing and others don't. The biology isn't cracked yet. But here's what gets genuinely interesting. This trial revealed something that challenges how we think about cancer treatment resistance. We assumed that if a tumor doesn't respond to standard doses, you need a different drug entirely. Different mechanism, different target. What Iravani's team suggested instead is that sometimes the answer is just more aggressively delivered. That's a different philosophy. It means some cancers aren't inherently resistant, they're just quiet. They're hiding in plain sight, and you need to be louder to reach them. That notion spreads across oncology. If it's true here, where else might it be true? The real unsolved mystery is, can we predict which patients will actually benefit? Is there a genetic signature we're missing? A molecular marker that separates the responders from the non-responders? Because if we could figure that out, we wouldn't have to give everyone intensive treatment. We could be surgical with it. We could spare patients who won't respond the extra toxicity. That's the next frontier, and you can be sure research teams are hunting for it right now. The most mind-blowing thing about this trial is this. Sometimes the solution to cancer's invisibility isn't stealth. It's being louder. Turns out, scientists have been busy, and they're not done yet.